So Captain America 4 wasn't great. I mean, the fact that it, like a lot of recent Marvel movies, was kind of mid isn't exactly an original observation. And honestly, if it was good, I wouldn't have much to say about it. But still, it wasn't great. To be clear, there is a difference between not being great and being terrible. I feel like the discourse on comic book movies has a tendency to be hyperbolic. Like, Wonder Woman 1984 is the worst movie I have ever seen. Thor Love and Thunder is the worst superhero movie ever made. And I just have to roll my eyes at that, because people who talk like that have clearly never seen a truly abysmal superhero movie. Brave New World isn't even the worst Captain America movie. Have you ever watched the 70s Captain America movie where he wears a motorcycle helmet and is in A Soldier Out of Time? Because I have. It was absolutely dog shit. That's the worst Captain America movie. Or how about the 90s movie where Cap was played by the son of beloved BoJack Horseman character J.D. Salinger and wore fake rubber ears? In that one, he steals a car by pretending to be carsick, and then later in the movie, he does it again. That's Captain America's power in that movie, stealing cars by pretending he has to throw up. No, Captain America Brave New World is a perfectly competently made film. It is well shot and well directed, the performances are fine, the special effects look like video game cutscenes in a few scenes, but for the most part are acceptable, and the script meets the basic requirements to count as a story. There is nothing in this film that stands out as especially terrible, but at the same time, nothing in the film really stands out as especially good either. Like, I rewatched the second and third Captain America movies recently, and they were filled with excellent, memorable scenes, and Brave New World wasn't. The final fight in DC and Isaiah's scene in prison are really the only parts of the film that stood out as being good. And there's a whole lot of movies surrounding those scenes. There is something respectable about the terrible pre-MCU Captain America films because they were incompetently made, but at least they were interesting, and Brave New World isn't. This is a problem with a lot of recent MCU films. Quantumania and the Marvels especially stand out as being films that just kinda exist, well enough made by the Marvel Studios machine to avoid being truly abysmal, but also lacking any spark or charm to make the film worth watching. Honestly, I'm a much bigger fan of Love and Thunder or Multiverse of Madness, these heavily flawed messes, than Brave New World, because a big swing that results in a film that is less than the sum of its parts is more interesting than a boring film that puts in a solid C+ performance in every aspect. Hell, I'd argue that Brave New World is significantly worse than The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that show was a mess! Ah, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That brings me back. That show was the subject of my second ever video essay. Or, I guess, to be more accurate, my second, third, and fourth, because I broke it into 3 parts because it was too long. I was a bitch-ass motherfucker back then. I rewatched both the show and the essays I made about it while working on this video, and man, 4 years ago Casey was not good at making video essays. Watching my old videos is agonizing. I still agree with most of my points from back then, but goddamn, those old videos are rough! During my discussion of that show's racial politics, I said that Aaron Kellyman was white because apparently Wikipedia didn't exist in 2020, which is why I was incapable of basic fucking fact-checking. But anyway, my whole take on The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was that it was one of those stories where the villain is fighting for an unambiguously good cause, but, oh no, they killed random people for no reason, so I guess we have to stick with the status quo. Except, like, the thing the Flag Smashers were fighting against was so incredibly cartoonishly horrible that, to me at least, it made it feel like a show with a villain protagonist. As a reminder, because it's been a few years, in the climax of that show, a bunch of politicians are trying to pass the Patch Act, which will forcibly deport 20 million immigrants. That's 2 with 7 zeros, 20 million people, and that's bad, right? Like, horrifically, unimaginably bad, right? The absurd scale of violence the Patch Act would bring would make this dickweed on the upper half of MCU villains in terms of sheer number of fatalities. And I wrote that line as a joke, but then I actually sat down and worked it out, and yep, he's up there. You cannot forcibly relocate millions of people without killing a massive chunk of them. We even see a preview of this in the show where Carly's adoptive mother, after being thrown in a refugee camp without adequate food or medicine by the GRC, dies of tuberculosis, which radicalizes Carly to violence. Bare minimum, thousands of people would have died like Danya if the Patch Act passed. And even ignoring the inevitable deaths, there's still unfathomable levels of violence. Every single person deported under the Patch Act would be a victim of government violence because that's what deportations are. The thing about immigration that pisses me off is that it's an issue where everyone dances around their motives. Republicans, and let's be honest, most Democrats as well, aren't honest when they talk about immigration, because the primary reason for immigration laws is racism. They don't want foreigners moving to the United States because they consider brown people to be inferior. And some people will be like, nuh-uh, I don't want them here because they're inherently violent criminals. And A, that's saying non-whites are inferior. And B, that is blatantly false according to actual studies, you racist piece of shit. Like, the real change Donald Trump brought to American politics is not that he originated the racism, it's that he dropped the euphemism. He's a man who drops the bullshit and flat out says that we should have strong immigration laws because he believes that non-whites are poisoning our white bloodlines. But of course, he isn't the only politician who believes that. It's just that the average politician hides behind a facade of decency. And The Falcon and the Winter Soldier also treats immigration as an issue completely unrelated to racism. It's a show about racism, but there are never any parallels drawn between the Isaiah Bradley plotline and the Carly Morgenthau one, to the show's detriment. It's a show where ethnic cleansing is treated as a completely colorblind activity with no racial undertones. So there's a character who wants the US government to round up and get rid of all the Hispanic people. That's fine, I guess, for a story. I mean, the Red Skull was a Nazi. What's wrong with Captain America fighting against a guy who wants to murder immigrants? But the thing is, that isn't who Cap fights. He fights the Flag Smashers, the group trying to stop the ethnic cleansing. And the obvious response to this is, what the fuck? The bad guys are bad because they're trying to stop the government from hurting millions of innocent people? What? Who wrote this dog shit? Malcolm Spellman. He also wrote, oh, son of a bitch. Also Joseph Sawyer, Dalen Musung, Derek Kolstad, and Michael Castelline. TV shows are group projects with a lot of different writers. And like, the main justification a lot of people use to justify brutal fucking immigration policies in real life is to throw their hands up and moan about the sanctity of the law and how actually any amount of violence whatsoever is justified against those who break the law, no matter how unjust the law is. Because it's the law. You gotta do what the law says. And you have to murder those children who broke the law, because the law is the law, and they broke the law, and murdering children isn't against the law, but stepping over the line we drew in the desert to keep out brown people is, and that's the law, and the law is the law is the law. Point is, that dumb fuck claim flat out does not work in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because the show is very specific about the fact that the Patch Act isn't rounding up quote-unquote illegals. It's rounding up anyone and everyone who immigrated in the past 5 years, because aw shucks, the blip made production lines complicated, so we have no choice. Sure, you went through all the hoops, you immigrated here following every single immigration law, but we decided retroactively that you're a criminal based on the color of your skin. But this isn't a racist thing. We're just having the military round up and get rid of all the Hispanic people for reasons that aren't racist. This stupid fucking show has characters say and be treated as honest. God, this show fucking sucks. And like, it's a show that can't make up its mind if Carly is sympathetic or not. Like, they do the fucking doll shot. The Flag Smashers go back to the refugee camp and everyone there has been abducted by the GRC, including that little girl Zemo talked to, and all that's left is a doll. Like, if Mulan ended with Li Shang fighting Mulan to stop her from killing Shan Yu, because killing is wrong. You gotta let this guy murder these civilians, Mulan. Is that little girl okay? Is she in prison? Is she dead? Fuck if I know. They never show her again after she gets kidnapped. But also, aw shit, they have Carly kill some random people in a move that does not advance her goals in any way, which makes her the bad guy, so I guess we gotta do that ethnic cleansing. This rant is going on too long, and it isn't even about the shitty film this video is ostensibly about. My ultimate point is that in The Winter Soldier, when the government tried to hurt innocent people, Captain America put his foot down, he said the price of freedom is high, and he fought to stop a government agency from slaughtering innocent people. In The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, when the government tries to hurt innocent people, Captain America swoops in to ensure they don't get stopped. Like, if Malcolm Spellman wrote The Winter Soldier, it would have ended with Fury aiming a gun at Pierce, and then Sam would fly in through the window and tackle him and say, I get where you're coming from, but you can't just kill people, and then he'd give a mediocre speech that would make Pierce decide suddenly that he didn't want to be a fascist anymore. Ultimately, the 4 years since that shitty show came out have not changed my opinions on it. Seeing what's going on now with the Trump administration rounding up hundreds of people, nearly all of them completely fucking innocent, and throwing them in a fucking torture prison in El Salvador has solidified my belief that immigration laws are barbaric. It has made me more sympathetic to the cause of the flag smashers. But I'm like the only Marvel fan on the planet who feels that way, it seems, because in recent months, fans of that show have begun reevaluating it and re-examining it as a show about one true hero, John Walker. I'm so fucking sick of John Walker glazing. I could rant for the next hour about Walker stands, but I've already spent, 10 minutes ranting about a thing other than this video's subject, something I've gotten flack for in the past, so I think I should just shut up and stop talking about politics and talk about the movie where Captain America fights the president, something that isn't at all political. Ooh, black and white Marvel logo. It's almost like this is a political thriller. Almost. Film begins with Thaddeus Ross, having just been elected President of the United States, about to go out on stage and give his acceptance speech. However, he's more concerned that he hasn't heard back from his daughter, Betty. Ross previously appeared as a secondary antagonist in The Incredible Hulk, Civil War, and Black Widow, also having cameo appearances in Infinity War and Endgame. In those films, he was played by the late William Hurt, who passed away in 2022 while this film was in the early stages of development. Brave New World recasts Hurt with Harrison Ford, and honestly, I don't think he does a great job. Harrison Ford is a good actor, but in this movie, he's appearing as an existing character, portrayed by another great actor. Hurt was really good at making Ross come off as this smug, self-assured asshole who makes things miserable for superheroes, but thinks he's in the right. Ford's performance lacks a lot of that arrogance, instead just giving the gruff old action hero performance Ford normally hands in. Unlike with Don Cheadle or Mark Ruffalo, I think the character is worse after being recast. Side note, it's interesting that there is an apparent tier of importance for Marvel Studios where they won't recast you. Like, they didn't recast Chadwick Boseman after he died, and I doubt they would have recast Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, or Chris Evans as characters if they passed away. But they recast William Hurt! Ross downs some pills and walks out onto a stage full of cheering supporters. Behind him sits the word "Together," apparently the centerpiece of his campaign. Ross brings up the plots of Infinity War and the Eternals, saying, "The threats we face show no signs of slowing down. The only way we can overcome them is together." The film cuts to Captain America watching a news broadcast about Ross's election in a bar. The newscasters recap that Ross used to hunt the Hulk, saying that he got in trouble for angry outbursts during a press conference, and also for being responsible for destroying a large part of Harlem, and yeah, that's accurate to American politics. They would list angrily shouting at a press conference as worse than killing people, because civility politics are a fucking joke. Fortunately, Ross silenced his critics by nabbing the man responsible for creating the abomination. Recap for The Incredible Hulk, because it's been 17 years since that film came out. Samuel Stearns, played by Tim Blake Nelson, was a scientist friend of Bruce Banner. In that movie, Ross tries to stop the Hulk by giving bloodthirsty Colonel Emil Blonsky a super soldier serum. This isn't enough for Blonsky to beat the Hulk, so he murders another soldier and holds Stearns at gunpoint, forcing him to turn him into a Hulk. He then smashes Stearns, causing his head to split open, and Hulk blood to drip into his brain, causing it to start mutating. By the way, I'm going to talk a lot in this video about how this movie sucks, and it does. It sucks so hard. But The Incredible Hulk is the most nothing burger of a movie possible. I don't give a shit about a single scene in that film. Rewatching The Incredible Hulk made me appreciate Brave New World more. Then I rewatched Civil War and remembered what good films are like and went back to thinking Brave New World sucked. The news also brings up the fact that Ross's daughter doesn't talk to him anymore, and damn, that's personal. Wait to roast the president. They also say that Ross has a tumultuous relationship with Captain America, calling them two of our most important leaders, and it sounds really weird to put Captain America on the same level as the president, but also the Avengers are honestly more influential than the entire US government in this universe. As the news broadcast describes Stearns being arrested, the movie cuts to a mysterious lab. Then we get our title, Captain America, Brave New World. That's a dumb fucking title. But it could have been worse. This movie was originally going to be called New World Order after the conspiracy theory that there's an evil shadowy cabal that controls the world. That conspiracy, like many conspiracies, is often extremely anti-Semitic. Like, 9 times out of 10, when someone is talking about the shadowy them that control the world, they mean the Jews. And maybe someone in Marvel should have caught that before they decided to name their film with a Jewish villain, New World Order. But also, it's a bad title because there isn't a New World Order. There's no shadowy group controlling the government. It's just one guy that hates the president. The evil Jewish conspiracy is just one guy, which by definition makes it not a conspiracy. I can accept anti-Semitism, but I draw the line at misleading marketing. Brave New World is also a dumb title. It's taken from the 1932 dystopian novel by Aldous Huxley, which this film has absolutely nothing to do with. But at least it kind of fits with the plot. Like, in this movie, the world is changing, so I guess it counts as a Brave New World. It's still a dumb name, though. It could also be a reference to the Shakespeare quote that the Huxley novel was named after, but that doesn't really fit either. The point is that this film is the second best superhero sequel named after a dystopian novel that has nothing to do with its plot. Cut to 5 months after Ross's election. Captain America is working with Navy SEALs to carry out a secret mission for Ross in Owaka and pause. What? He's doing what now? Wasn't Sam's whole thing in Civil War that he didn't want superheroes to work for the government, and more specifically, Thaddeus Ross? And now he's working for the military to retrieve a secret package for Ross? Did Sam forget his own beliefs? The Falcon and the Winter Soldier also began with Sam working for the military, so yeah, I guess so. Also, Owaka, looking at the map here, I'm not a geography expert, might be wrong on this, but that does not appear to be the United States. What the fuck are Navy SEALs doing in Mexico? Did Ross invade Mexico? Or does this film just operate under the assumption that the US military can go wherever and do whatever they want without issue? Which is untrue. The US military can only go to most countries and do whatever they want. They can't do military shit in Mexico willy-nilly. I mean, they can, but it would be an international incident and potentially an act of war. I mean, maybe the Mexico government requested Captain America to enter, but if that was the case, you'd imagine there'd be some Mexican soldiers involved with the military operation. Also, forgive me, but I'm a bit testy about movies showing the American military invading Mexico to fight crime as a good thing, because, as a reminder, there's real possibility that that's gonna happen pretty soon. Anyway, Captain America is sent in to retrieve a package that was stolen by Sidewinder, a mercenary played by Giancarlo Esposito, who does speak Spanish in one scene, because the producers heard all the praise Esposito got for speaking Spanish in Breaking Bad, and decided that this film would be incomplete without a scene where he spoke Spanish. Sidewinder is holed up in a church where he's taken a bunch of nuns hostage. Cap ignores the Navy SEALs telling him to ignore the hostages and retrieve the package, instead sending his sidekick, Joaquin Torres, aka Falcon, to grab it. Torres is the comic relief character, and does a little dance when he defeats Sidewinder's mooks. If this film ended with Torres being shot in the head, I would feel absolutely nothing. Cap saves the hostages, but Sidewinder gets away when he's attacked by a big buff dude named Copperhead. Copperhead mocks Sam for being weaker than the old Captain America, and Sam beats him anyway in a mediocre fight scene. Like, you have this really cool character who can fly and reflect energy, so naturally, the best thing to feature is a generic fistfight that lacks the speed and choreography of good MCU fistfights. Damn, this movie's good! Meanwhile, Ross visits his wife's grave. He tells Layla, one of his Secret Service agents, that Betty still isn't talking to him because she doesn't believe that he's changed, and he doesn't think he'll get another shot. Apparently, Betty still hasn't forgiven him for the events of The Incredible Hulk, where she said, I quote, "I will never forgive you for what you've done to him. Don't ever speak to me as your daughter again." Yeah, apparently she was serious about that. As Ross leaves the cemetery, we see the cherry blossom trees are near his wife's grave. Interesting. Back in Mexico, Cap thinks it's suspicious that the mercenaries were holding the package in a random, hard-to-defend church, and that the buyer never showed up. Cap takes tourists to train with Isaiah Bradley, and the film recaps Isaiah's backstory, that he was a super soldier who fought during the Korean War, and was imprisoned and experimented on by the US government for 30 years. In the middle of training, Sam receives a call from the president. Isaiah is bothered by this, saying it doesn't sit right with him, Captain America answering to the president, and that as long as Sam works for him, Captain America will stand for people like Ross. Isaiah also says this film's best line, "We're talking about Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. Son of a bitch earned that nickname too." Hey, what does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? Isaiah phrases it like Ross's nickname was Asshole Ross, but what's wrong with the name Thunderbolt? Oh, by the way, leaked MCU rumor, I heard that in Doomsday, they're going to change Ross's name to Thaddeus New Avenger Ross. Yeah, that's a change they're gonna be making. Cap says that Ross is an asshole who hunted him for years and will never change, but, I mean, he's the president. Yes, that is Isaiah's point, Sam! Sam says that the country is lost, and seeing Captain America standing next to the president will give people hope. He isn't wrong. Like, a lot of people criticize this movie as being a political thriller that had nothing to say politically, and I mostly disagree with that. There is a core political message at the heart of this movie. It's set up right at the start with Ross's speech about togetherness. Now, this film's message is really shallow and doesn't work because of the elephant in the room, but it is trying to say something. But put a pin in that because the movie needs to set up its themes before I can explain why they fall short. For now, I'll just say this. The president being a good person who stands alongside Captain America is good. But that does not mean that Captain America standing alongside the president will make the president good. If anything, it's pretending Ross is something he isn't to give people false hope. Sam heads to the White House, Isaiah and Torres in tow. Isaiah wears a new suit that looks nice. The invitation says 2027, meaning Ross was elected in 2026, and that isn't an election year. This is a good segue to a tangent I like to call, what the fuck is the deal with MCU presidents? Obama and Trump are both mentioned to exist in Luke Cage, which is ostensibly canon, but in Iron Man 3, taking place in 2013, the president is this guy, Matthew Ellis. The general assumption by fans is that Obama was elected in 2008, then lost to Ellis in 2012 because people were frightened by the Battle of New York. And then, I guess Trump got elected in 2016 for, the reasons he got elected in real life, which means that Trump was the president during Infinity War. Oh, sweet Jesus, he would not have handled that well. Secret Invasion, a show that I have not watched, had this guy, James Ritson, as president in 2025, but Ross was canonically elected in 2026. The general assumption is that Thanos' actions led to a snap election in 2022, where Ritson was elected. Now, the real question is, what party is Ross? Republican. He's a Republican. I mean, don't say Republican, but I mean, come on. Come on! Sam and company arrive at the White House and Sam meets with Ross. Ross says they haven't always agreed on whether or not superheroes should work independently, but that he's reconsidered after the Avengers saved the world. He asks Sam to rebuild a new Avengers team that works for him. Sam is hesitant to rebuild the team and asks what'll happen if the Avengers and Ross disagree. Ross says, it's fine, don't worry about that, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, which is really comforting considering what I did the last time Sam disagreed with him. Ross also introduces Cap to Japanese Prime Minister has no given name Ozaki, and hey look, more cherry blossoms. Ross gives a presentation about Celestial Island, that big, dead alien god in the middle of the Indian Ocean from the Eternals. Remember that? It's okay if you don't, I barely remember that film. He explains the country squabbled over the island, especially after discovering that it contained a new strange metal, adamantium, which is even more indestructible than vibranium and not controlled by an isolationist nation. Two things. First off, Wakanda hasn't been isolationist for a decade, you racist prick. Second, this movie features a Navy SEAL guy who's friends with Captain America in a few scenes, who's this big buff hairy guy, and while watching this movie in the theater, I began theorizing that they would reveal that he was actually Wolverine. He isn't. His name is Dennis Dunphy, he's a sidekick of Cap from Grunwald's run, except he kind of is Wolverine, because, I mean, this is his design from the comics. I filmed this video over several days, and this morning I had to report on a bunch of things that were happening outside for my day job, and now I'm all sunburned. I'm just going to pretend that the leader is responsible for me being all red. Ross explains that he's arranged a new international treaty that will equitably distribute adamantium to the world and ensure no nation gets left behind. Then Isaiah does what millions of Americans fantasize about doing every single day and tries to kill the president. 4 other Secret Service / military guys also tried to kill Ross. Damn, 5 different people decided to try and kill the president at the same time? Here I was thinking Gerald Ford had it bad. Be sure to subscribe for more hard-hitting President Ford humor. There's a big fight during which this lady tries to shoot Isaiah but is stopped by Cap. Isaiah runs away, Sam chases after him. They're stopped at a park where Isaiah snaps out of his mind control. Sam tells him to surrender, but Isaiah tearfully says that he can't go back inside. Sam says that if he runs, it'll be worse, and Isaiah surrenders. The cops shove him to the ground, ruining his new suit. Cap storms into the presidential bunker. Ross introduces him to his security advisor, Ruth Bader Saraaf. This leads me to a question that will assuredly make this comment section absolutely peachy. Does Captain America 4 endorse the Gazan genocide? The short answer is no. The long answer is complicated. In the comics, Ruth Bader Saraaf is a Mossad agent turned superhero named Sabra. The term Sabra literally means prickly pear cactus, but is a slang term for Jewish Israelis. And right off the bat, that's a shitty fucking character name. Like, hey Bill, I heard you and Sal came up with a new Jewish superhero. What's your name for her? Jew. The name I came up for this new Jewish superhero is Jew. That is why I'm naming this Jewish character. I mean, it could have been worse. Could have been 1980s DC Comics, who invented a character whose name is a racial slur for Romani people. Could have been that. Sabra is also the name of the location of a brutal mass killing carried out during the Lebanese Civil War, and I have seen some people assert that Sabra was named after that massacre, and no, she wasn't. The Sabra and Shatila massacre happened in 1982, which was 2 years after Sabra debuted in the comics. Anyway, this is what Sabra's comic costume is, and yeah, you can see why a lot of people were hesitant when this character's inclusion was announced. She's the Israeli Captain America, and this film came out when the Israeli military was actively carrying out a genocide. Hey, I see you there, person about to comment, who is mad that I called it a genocide. I have one thing to say to that. Eat shit and die. Get the fuck out of my comment section. I will delete any and all comments trying to equivocate on whether or not genocide is good. So, understandably, a lot of people were wary of a character that glorifies the Mossad appearing in a movie released in 2025. That'd be like releasing a movie with the Russian Captain America during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or releasing a Captain America movie during the War on Terror. Oh wait. Marvel having a superhero who dresses in the colors of a violent, mass-murdering imperialist power isn't good, but also they kinda have been doing that for decades. But at least Captain America has been used for discussions and analysis of what America stands for. Have they done the same for Sabra in the comics? Fuck if I know, I didn't know this character existed until this movie was announced. Although I have read her first proper appearance in The Incredible Hulk number 256 by Bill Manteo and Sal Buscema because people posted screen grabs online when Sabra's inclusion was announced. And I'd be remiss if I didn't describe this truly fascinating issue titled Power in the Promised Land, or Power and Peril in the Promised Land. The cover and the first page disagree, and oh boy, look at that cover. That's a dead child in a pile of rubble as Hulk is fighting a Mossad agent. Yikes! This is gonna be rough, isn't it? Also, of course it's a fucking Hulk comic that this character is from, because apparently Brave New World is a Hulk movie. By the way, the story features a short scene showing a bunch of animal people reading the news about Hulk, and that threw me through a loop because I have no goddamn idea who these people are. I'm not a big Hulk expert. Apparently they appeared in a previous issue. The story proper begins with Bruce Banner unconscious on a cargo ship that arrives in Tel Aviv. He freaks out and turns into the Hulk and starts smashing stuff. Ruth Bader Saraaf sees this and decides to change into her costume, but Hulk knocks her out by accident before she can change. Goddamn, she was introduced taking the biggest L possible. After calming down, Bruce befriends a young Palestinian boy named Sahad, who gives an oversimplified explanation of the Israeli-Palestine conflict, and then is randomly blown up by a stereotypical Arab terrorist. Hulk smashes. Sabra shows up and attacks him, and this comic's creators found out that a slang term for Jewish Israelis is also a type of cactus, so they invented an Israeli Jewish superhero named Cactus, who has cactus powers? Seriously? Also, you know how Thor will shout, "By Odin's beard!" Well, Sabra, like all Jews, shouts, "Star of David!" when she's surprised. Sabra accuses Hulk of killing Sahad, and Hulk gets pissed, saying he died because Israelis and Palestinians couldn't share. Hulk jumps away, saying he came here looking for peace, but there's no peace here. So yeah, that was kind of racist and really stereotypical towards both Israelis and Palestinians, and it did oversimplify the actual political situation, but I mean, I'm not gonna knock a book for taking the stance that war is bad and that civilian casualties are abhorrent. Honestly, treating the deaths of Palestinian children as a thing that is bad makes Hulk more moral than 99% of American politicians. In the middle of the story, like literally in the middle of Hulk's speech about how horrible Sahad's death is, the book cuts away for a one-page Daredevil advertisement where he fights the ultimate supervillain, punk rock musicians. Daredevil defeats them by offering them Hostess fruit pies. Man, this sure does fit in perfectly with the rest of the issue. Nothing pairs with child death quite like fruit pie ads. If only Hulk had brought some fruit pies with him to Tel Aviv, then he could have put an end to the Israel-Palestine conflict before Sahad died through the power of Hostess fruit pies. Anyway, the main reason I wanted to mention this story is because of how it ends with Sabra taking Hulk's words to heart and mourning Sahad, and the narration, this fucking narration says, "She is, after all, an Israeli super agent, a soldier, a weapon of war, but she is also a woman, capable of feeling, capable of caring." And you know, I like that. Like, the narration saying, as a soldier, she would normally feel nothing about a murdered child, but she is also a woman with womanly emotions! I'm like 2 layers of tangent deep right now, so let's go back up a level. The fact that Sabra was going to appear in this film led to calls for boycott, and honestly, I was curious to watch this film to see exactly how badly Marvel shot themselves in the foot, because this film was filmed March through June 2023, and like, things weren't good in Palestine back then, but they were better than they were when this movie came out. So Marvel filmed a movie with this character before the genocide began, and I was curious to see how badly they fucked up. And they didn't. Not really. I expected Ruth to just be a generic government agent, and that's what she is. She doesn't wear the costume, she's just called Ruth, and like, there isn't a scene where she goes to a podium and gives a speech about how Palestinians must be exterminated if you were worried that that was a thing that would happen. She's fine. She's played by an Israeli actress, but she's a Black Widow instead of a Mossad agent, which is better, I guess, because it's less directly related to current events. Although, given the fact that this super stereotypically Israeli character being Israeli is irrelevant to her role in the film, why choose a character with so much baggage? I don't know! Honestly, this is a good foreshadowing of a big flaw with this film. It is a political thriller conceived in 2022, but delayed and released in 2025. 3 years is a long time in terms of politics, and this film's political commentary often feels woefully outdated. Anyway, Sam says that Isaiah had no reason to attack Ross. Ruth says, hey, the US government kidnapped and tortured him for 30 years. And side note, did those guys that experimented on Isaiah go to jail? Like, in real life, the Tuskegee experiment guys didn't, so probably not. That's fucked up. Sam asks to be allowed to investigate, and Ross says that the optics would be bad. He also says, you're not Steve Rogers, and you'd better wise up, son. And like, does that feel racist to anyone else? This Ross guy is a bit of an asshole. I hope he loses re-election. Sam decides to investigate anyway. Also, Ross pops another pill and calls one of his goons to confirm that Stearns is still in his cell. Sam goes to visit Isaiah at the prison, and during the establishing shot, it's stated by the news voiceover that Isaiah is facing the death penalty. When Sam gets there, Isaiah isn't doing so well. He explains that he was mind-controlled and doesn't remember anything, and tells Sam he should have stayed in hiding. Isaiah breaks down, crying, saying he's going to die in here. Carl Lumbly gives the best performance in this film by a wide margin, which is why it's so disappointing that he disappears from the plot almost entirely after this scene. This film gets a lot of comparisons to The Winter Soldier. They're both Captain America movies, they're both trying to be political thrillers, and they both feature an old super soldier friend of Cap's being mind-controlled into doing evil. Except The Winter Soldier was a core part of the film bearing his name. The spectacular climax of that movie hinges on Steve's relationship with Bucky. Isaiah being imprisoned gives Sam motivation to defeat the film's villain, but it's just the inciting incident, and is completely irrelevant to the movie's climax. Which is a shame because, again, Isaiah is this film's best character. They didn't want to just do the Falcon and the Winter Soldier again. They said in interviews that they didn't want to do another story about Sam being unsure of himself being Captain America because they already did that. They didn't want to do another story about the complicated relationship Black veterans have with the United States because they already did that. They didn't want to do another story interrogating what symbols like Captain America mean because they already did that. And that's fine. It isn't wrong for a movie to take the plot in a different direction. But half the time it feels like Brave New World lists out a bunch of things it doesn't want to be about, then forgets to actually be about something. Isaiah has this incredible, tragic backstory, and Lumbly gives an immaculate performance, but this isn't a movie about Isaiah. It isn't a movie about the mistreatment of black soldiers. You could have had Layla or Dumpy be mind-controlled into shooting Ross, and the film's plot wouldn't change, so what is the point of Isaiah being the shooter if you aren't going to do anything with the character traits that make Isaiah interesting? Isaiah tells Sam to leave and never come back because he doesn't want Sam to get hurt saving him. Torres reviews the footage and realizes that Isaiah and the other assassins were brainwashed via flashing lights on their phones. This leads to the film's real message that old people should stop using Facebook because it's rotting their brains and making them evil. Young people should also stop using social media because it's rotting their brains and making them evil. Mark Zuckerberg should be tried at The Hague. Cap realizes that the mastermind paid Sidewinder to steal the adamantium, then didn't show up to buy it, so Sidewinder would be defeated by Captain America, so Captain America would be invited to the White House and invite Isaiah to come along so Isaiah could try to kill the president. This is an extremely dumb plan that relies on too many assumptions. Like, this film's villain is supposed to be this super-duper super genius, and that allows him to predict everything, but there were simpler ways to get Isaiah to meet with Ross than this convoluted horseshit, namely by mind-controlling Ross into inviting Isaiah to the White House. That's the problem with the villain having mind control powers. It's what's known as a story breaker power. He can accomplish anything by just mind-controlling people into doing what he wants, except instead, he mind-controls people into manipulating other people into maybe doing what he wants, and half the time it doesn't work because of fucking course it doesn't. I'm gonna be complaining about the mastermind, by the way it's Stearns in case that wasn't obvious. I'm going to be complaining about Stearns' plan a lot because it is so fucking stupid. And like, bad guys can make mistakes and have dumb plans, but when you position a character as being really smart, and their plan only makes sense if they're an idiot, then that just takes the viewer out of the movie. As Sam is driving, he is ambushed by Sidewinder. You know, Giancarlo Esposito is famous for playing these intimidating, manipulative villains, which is why, in this film, that needed an intimidating, manipulative villain, they had him play a random mercenary dude, because, you know, when I think Esposito, I think action hero. This film wastes him completely, which honestly makes sense, because he wasn't originally in the movie. Brave New World underwent extensive reshoots in 2024. Part of this is because early test screenings went poorly, but a lot of this is because of the writer's strike. Like, from my understanding, writers will often rewrite parts of films as they're being filmed, and it becomes apparent some aspects could be more clear, or some lines don't work as well when spoken as on the page, but this luxury was not afforded to Brave New World. They filmed this movie understanding they would need to reshoot some scenes after the strike was over. I don't know what this film was like before the reshoots. All that the people who worked on it have said is that they cut a few scenes and added Sidewinder, Director Julius Ona said in an interview that the core of this film was there before the reshoots, and I believe that. Anthony Mackie also said that the film wasn't retooled during reshoots. Ona also said that Esposito was added to replace the original Serpent Society scenes, which were apparently more comic booky and less grounded. That's a stupid fucking change, but the problem of this film isn't that it's too serious, it's that it's very serious, but not very deep. It might have been a slightly better film if it began with Captain America fighting a bunch of zany villains in snake costumes, but the fact that the cold open minor villains are kinda bland is not even close to being the primary problem with this movie. The point is, last minute reshoots can change something a bit, but it's unlikely that they're the reason this movie isn't very good. And honestly, last minute reshoots can be fine. You know, in the past, when I've realized that I should have talked about something that I didn't talk about right before a video comes out, when I don't have any time left to film the new part, I would just skip that. But doing audio-only reshoots that are very clearly added in last minute like this are actually a good thing I should do in videos more. Sidewinder's scenes feature a lot of exposition. I feel like they were added because some parts of the film weren't clear enough in the original draft, so hey, here audience, here's a scene of Gus from Breaking Bad explaining what Stearns' plan is. But also, you could cut all 3 of the scenes featuring this character from the movie with only minimal changes, so what even is the point of this character? During his fight with Cap, Sidewinder says, the guy who hired me said there was a 77% chance you would try to talk to me and figure out my motives, and oh wow, he must be so smart to think there's a decent probability that Sam fucking Wilson would try to talk to a villain. Only someone as smart as Stearns could figure that out. Anyway, Sam defeats Sidewinder. Sidewinder's phone begins ringing. Sam answers and Stearns says, "Well done, Captain. You won't like what comes next." And then he hangs up. Hey, quick question. Why doesn't he use his mind control video on Captain America right now? Just text the video to Sidewinder's phone and boom, you can mind control Cap into killing himself. And then boom, no more Captain America fucking with your plan. And I mean, Sam knows about the mind control video at this point and might look away, but also, you could have texted it to him before Torres told him about it. That would have taken less time than hiring Sidewinder to track down and ambush Cap. Or, fuck it, just put a bomb in his truck while he's at the prison. There are a lot of easier ways to get rid of Captain America. Meanwhile, the leaders of France and India are threatening to leave the treaty because of the White House attack, and Japan is already pulled out. Ross flies to Japan to convince Ozaki to get back on board. Another quick question real quick. Why these 4 countries? Tiamat's corpse is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, so India having claim over it makes sense, depending on where exactly the island is located. France being there seems weird, but there is a French overseas territory in the Indian Ocean called Reunion, so it's possible that the island falls within France's maritime borders. Except Reunion is a long way from India, and there are other countries like Madagascar and the Maldives that would presumably also have claims. Let's ignore that for a second, because the bigger question is, what is Japan doing here? Japan isn't anywhere near the Indian Ocean. The US claiming the island because the US is a big imperial nation that likes to swing its stick around makes sense, but Japan trying to claim an island between India and Reunion doesn't. Now, this is implied to be a big international UN treaty, but if that was the case, why does this film treat it as if getting signatures from these 3 random countries is all that matters? Wouldn't it need signatures from a whole bunch of other countries if it's an international thing? That said, Japan being the main country that Ross has to convince to sign the treaty makes sense thematically, if not logically, because cherry blossoms. While flying to Japan on Air Force One, the plane is hijacked by Gary Oldman. Also, Ross receives a call from Stearns, who has just escaped from his secret prison after killing his guard. Stearns taunts Ross, saying that when he's done, everyone will know just who you are, and Betty will despise you more. No, she won't! Spoilers, but Stearns' plan is to turn Ross into a Hulk, something that was spoiled by every single poster and commercial. And if there is one human being on the planet who would be understanding when a loved one is turned into a Hulk, it's Betty Ross. What the fuck is Stearns even on about? Back at his America cave, Sam rewatches the video of Isaiah attacking Ross, realizing that Isaiah missed all the shots for some reason. And I don't know, maybe it's because he hasn't used a gun in 70 years and shooting at a moving target is difficult. Torres tracks Stearns' cell to a military base called Camp Echo 1, and he and Sam drive there to investigate. Wait, hold on. Stearns failed to kill Captain America, then called him to taunt him, and that led Captain America to his base? This Stearns guy is a bit of an idiot, isn't he? Before leaving, Cap switches to a different costume for some fucking reason. I prefer his costume from the start of the movie. The white and blue costume is more comic accurate than the solid blue one, and it makes him look distinct from Steve. But, you see, he had to change the costume because he felt like it. Ruth goes to interrogate the shooters, but a guard kills them all and then himself because, as a reminder, Stearns can mind control people into killing themselves. Ruth moves Isaiah to solitary for his protection. Isaiah says he doesn't want to be in a box ever again. Then Russ calls Ruth and tells her to go stop Sam and Torres, and the scene just kind of ends with Isaiah standing there, and he doesn't have another line until after the climax. Isaiah's the best character in this movie, and they do jack fucking shit with him. Also, Sam and Torres find out about the prison deaths, which were meant to lure them back to Isaiah to keep them from arriving at Camp Echo 1, but ignore them because they realize that it's bait. You know, for a guy who is so super duper super smart that he can predict anything, Stearns sure is wrong about everything constantly. Ross meets with Ozaki and tells him the world needs the treaty. Ozaki says, diplomacy must be hard for you, a man in a country so used to taking what it wants by force. He reveals that Sidewinder was hired to steal the adamantium by the US government. Ross calls him a dumb fuck who's too naive to see he's being played, pointing out that if he wanted to steal the adamantium, why the hell would he give it back? Ozaki says they'll never know and storms away after rejecting the treaty. So it's war then, because this is a territorial dispute, and those are solved either through treaties or through war. Ross is an asshole, but just walking away from a treaty meant to prevent a war between Japan and the United States isn't something to be done on a whim. What do you think happens now that you refuse to sign the treaty that keeps people from killing each other? This Ozaki guy's a bit of an idiot. I hope he loses re-election. Sam and Torres arrive at Camp Echo 1 and sneak into Stearns' prison lab. Oh look! Torres is looking at a screen in Stearns' lab. Hey, here's a suggestion on what Stearns should have shown on the screen. The flashing lights that mind control you into wanting to kill Captain America. You could have done that, Stearns. Why didn't you fucking do that, dipshit? Instead of that, the pair find evidence that Stearns has been giving Ross pills for his heart condition. Stearns approaches Captain Torres, clad in shadows with glowing green eyes. He looks really creepy, then he walks into the light and actually, he still looks creepy. I like this design. Sam asks why he wants to kill Ross, and Stearns says that if he wanted Ross dead, he'd be dead. Which is confusing because he wanted Cap dead, and Captain America does not appear to be dead right now. But, if you wanted him dead, he'd be dead, I thought. Stearns explains that he wants revenge because Ross imprisoned him without trial for 17 years. Stearns, I really feel for you, man. 17 years is a long time, but unfortunately, you debuted in the worst MCU movie, so they had to wait, so long to remember you existed. Maybe if you had been in a better movie, you would have gone out in 2 years. Just saying. Stearns asks why Sam is protecting Ross, given the fact that Ross knows Isaiah is innocent, but is still keeping him in prison. Unfortunately, for some reason, Sam can't just sit by and let Stearns go through his plan of killing a bunch of innocent people to ruin Ross's political career. God, Captain America is so unreasonable in this movie. A bunch of mind-controlled soldiers show up to kill Sam and Torres, allowing Stearns to run away. None of the soldiers are using lethal weapons because during the fight, the mind control lights are flashing for ambience, which raises an important question. Why didn't Stearns set the ambiance lights to the mind control Captain America into committing suicide setting? This Stearns guy is such a fucking moron. I hope he loses re-election. Ruth shows up and helps Sam and Torres. She's wearing a black and blue jacket, which is supposed to evoke her comic costume without being as blatant as having the literal Star of David on her chest, but The blue zipper and pockets make it look like a cross, which is a really weird thing to replace the Star of David with. I mean, it's unintentional, but that's the first thing that came to mind when I saw her. As the trio are leaving the base, Sam and Torres are arrested for trespassing because, shit, the law still applies to superheroes. Why does Sam keep forgetting that the law applies to him? Maybe it's because most of the time it doesn't. Fortunately, the FBI guys are mind-controlled into trying to kill Cap, so he doesn't have to feel bad about beating the shit out of them so he can run away. Question: how many people did Stern's Manchurian Candidate? Because apparently he thought to Manchurian Candidate literally every single person on the planet except Captain America. Like, seriously, it is absurd how many people are Manchurian Candidated in this film. Meanwhile, Ross's aides tell him that Japan is mobilizing to take control of the Celestial Island. Ross, overwhelmed by the stress, hits his stone table hard enough to crack it. He decides to send an aircraft carrier to take the island by force, saying that if only one country's going to have adamantium, it's going to be the US. Also, he wants to go in person. For some fucking reason. Layla says it'll be dangerous if war breaks out, and Ross says, I was a wartime general, now I'm a wartime president. You know that's bad, right? Like, being a wartime president is not something you should want to be, or sucks. This Ross guy is a bit of an idiot. I hope he gets Kennedy'd. Sam interrogates Sidewinder, who explains that Ross told Stearns he'd let him go if he helped him get elected, but then didn't because he's an asshole. Also, Stearns said earlier that he predicted that Ross would betray him, which raises the question, why help him get elected in the first place? Actually, wait, why did Stearns need Ross's help to get out of prison? We see him break out of prison with ease in this movie, so why didn't he just do that 17 years ago? Or, here's a question, why doesn't he just mind control Ross into pardoning him? Sidewinder exposits what the audience apparently didn't understand in the original cut, that Stearns wants to ruin Ross's reputation by starting a war with Japan, which will happen because he's an angry asshole. Ruth says that Ross isn't that man anymore, and that none of us have to be defined by our past. So, like, do you think that Ruth was forced to kill children when she was working for the Red Room? Because, you know, Yelena was forced to kill children for the Red Room. Do you think that after Ruth killed a child, she got sad and said, I am a Black Widow, but I am also a woman, and then just started crying? Also, Cap has Dumpy test what the pills he found in Stearns' lab are. This scene doesn't matter because later on Stearns murders Dumpy to keep him from telling Sam what the pills are. Goodbye, Dennis Dumpy, a character who, canonically, smells worse than horseshit in the comics. Spoilers, the pills contain gamma radiation because Stearns wants to turn Ross into a Hulk. That scene where Dumpy gets murdered ends with him asking, Who are you? And Stearns saying, Isn't it obvious? I'm the hero. And shut the fuck up, you VeggieTales-looking motherfucker. Cap heads out to the Celestial Island where the US and Japanese navies are rushing to claim the adamantium. Cap confronts Ross about the pills, and Ross angrily reveals that he was dying of heart failure, and Stearns saved him with the pills. He didn't let Stearns go because he couldn't risk losing the pills. You know, now that I think about it, personally betraying the guy making your heart medication isn't a smart plan, Mr. President. But unlike the scenes where Stearns acts stupid, I'm actually completely fine with Ross being a stupid asshole, because he's supposed to be a stupid asshole. Ross says that he's dedicated his entire life to serving his country, but the one person who matters to him doesn't seem to understand. Betty never forgave him for, hold on, let me check my notes real quick, trying to murder her boyfriend. Ross explains that his motivation was to survive long enough for Betty to see that there was more to her father, that he's still the same man who used to take her to see the cherry blossoms as a kid. He doesn't want to be Thunderbolt Ross. He wants to be this president who brings the country together and signs this treaty that brings the world together, which is why he's threatening to go to war with Japan over resources. Honestly, though, Harrison Ford does give a pretty good performance in this scene. Cap says he knows what it's like to feel like you have something to prove. Everyone only seeing one thing, but when showing there's more to you, it's not about when times are easy, it's about moments like this. Then Stearns murders an admiral, which somehow allows him to personally access the plane radios of some American pilots and make them opened fire on the Japanese fleet? You know, because admirals have personal phones that connect directly to each and every American fighter jet. This leads to a really cool action scene where Cap and Torres fight against the rogue pilots, trying to keep them and the Japanese planes from shooting each other down and starting a war. As they fight, the stress starts to get to Ross. Stern calls to taunt, saying, "Let out the rage. All that hatred you tried to hide, all that ugliness, it's still there, smoldering behind your eyes. Stop fighting it. Give into your rage. Let the monster inside out. Unleash your anger. Unleash your hatred. Nothing can stop you. You can crush them all. Tear apart the Japanese fleet. Kill Captain America!" But before Ross can turn into a Hulk, Sam stops the rogue pilots, preventing a war between the US and Japan from beginning. Stern screams in anger because his prediction didn't come true, which is a thing he should be used to at this point. So, can we step by step go through Stearns' plan? Because it's so fucking overcomplicated and stupid. As a reminder, his goal is to ruin Ross's reputation. This is how he does that. Step 1, secretly poison Ross with gamma radiation so he'll turn into a Hulk if he ever gets stressed. Step 2, hope that the easily angered guy doesn't get stressed out during the first 3 months of his time as President of the United States, a job that famously is not stressful at all. Step 3, steal CIA money and use it to pay Sidewinder to steal Japanese adamantium. Step 4, tell Sidewinder to deliver it to a random-ass church in Mexico. Step 5, hope Ross sends Captain America to retrieve it. Step 6, hope Ross rewards Captain America by inviting him to the White House. Step 7, hope Captain America invites his friend Isaiah Bradley, who doesn't want to go to the White House, but does anyway. Step 8, brainwash Isaiah into shooting at Ross in a way where the bullets only barely miss him, something you can guarantee will happen when shooting at a moving target with a pistol. Step 9, hope this causes Ozaki to pull out of the treaty. Step 10, call Ross and tell him that you are manipulating him. Step 11, reveal to Ozaki that America stole the adamantium to ensure he pulls out of the treaty he already pulled out of. Step 12, try to kill Captain America to keep him from interfering. Notably, Stearns repeatedly fails this step because he's an idiot. Step 13, call Captain America to taunt him, which definitely won't result in him tracking your call and interfering with your plan. Step 14, hope Ross is willing to start a war with Japan to get the adamantium after you've told him that you're manipulating him into doing this. Step 15, kill Dumphy to stop him from telling Captain America about the pills, which Captain America only found out about because you failed to kill him and then taunted him, which led him to your base. Step 16, brainwash American pilots into starting a war with Japan. Step 17, hope the stress of this causes Ross to turn into a Hulk and kill everyone. Step 18, hope that the public realizes that the Hulk that killed all those American soldiers was Ross because, if they don't, then all of this was for nothing. This plan does not work because Step 12 failed repeatedly, but also there were simpler ways to accomplish this plan. First off, why the fuck did you get Captain America involved? Instead of having one of the brainwashed Secret Service agents shoot at Ross, Stearns decides to make Captain America's friend do it, which requires a whole bunch of stupid bullshit in Mexico to set that up, and all that accomplishes is making sure Captain America investigates because now his friend is facing the death penalty. Why the fuck did you need Isaiah to do this? And setting that aside, Stearns tries to start a war with Japan because that'll stress Ross out, except there are other ways to stress a person out. For fuck's sake, just make him get stuck in traffic for an hour. This is so needlessly complicated. And also, if your goal is to ruin Ross's legacy, then why are you going through the complicated process of making him a Hulk? Like, there's some irony of him becoming what he hunted, but there are easier ways to ruin a politician's legacy. You have mind control tech. Make him go on TV and call Captain America the N-word, or make him drunk drive into a preschool, or make him pull his dick out, or wipe his ass with the Bible. There are 1,000 ways to make this man ruin his career that would have worked if you just mind controlled him. And you could argue that Stearns doesn't want to get revenge on Ross by taking away his free will, but he turns him into a Hulk. He fucks with his brain. So there's no excuse to not just mind control him. Stearns is such a fucking moron. Anyway, Torres is almost killed during the fight with the planes. Bucky shows up at the hospital to comfort Sam, telling him it's not his fault. Sam asks what made him think he could measure up to Steve and says that he should have taken the serum in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier because this is all starting to seem bigger than him. He says that Steve made a mistake, and Bucky says that Steve gave Sam the shield not because he was the strongest, but because he's Sam Wilson. Steve had the serum, and he still couldn't protect everyone he cared about. Sam's a human being doing his best. Steve gave people something to believe in, but Sam gives them something to aspire to. Sam's arc in this film is about him feeling like an underdog, feeling he can't measure up to Steve because he doesn't have superpowers, and honestly, this arc feels tacked on. Copperhead mentions it once, Ross says, "You're not Steve Rogers," and then we get this pep talk about how Sam gives people something to aspire to, and that's kinda it for the storyline. There is a good reason Steve made Sam Captain America, and there is a strength that is at the heart of the character, but Bucky doesn't say what it is. This scene ends with the revelation that Bucky Barnes is running for Congress, and as of the Thunderbolts, he has been elected! And here I was thinking that Grassley was old. Subscribe for more of that hard-hitting #Iowa humor. How did this man get elected? Like, I know he helped save the world during the Battle of Earth, but he was an assassin! He killed JFK! The Cold War is still so fresh in American minds that it is nearly impossible for any real leftist to hold office, but the people of New York voted for a literal Soviet assassin? How? MCU Fox News has got to be having a field day with this, between the reports on how Sam Wilson was a DEI hire and Jesse Waters' nightly rant about how the Wakandans are plotting white genocide. And Bucky does superhero stuff while he's a sitting congressman, and I feel like that wouldn't fly. During that car chase scene in Thunderbolts, he kills or at least severely injures a truck full of Valentina's goons. He shoots the truck with a grenade launcher and it flips, and we don't see anyone get out, so I'm betting that at least one person just died. Imagine turning on the news and finding out that AOC just killed a guy with a grenade launcher. That's what it's like living in the MCU. Thunderbolts was a better movie than this one, by the way, because it had a good arc for its protagonist, characters that bounced off each other really well, and a well-thought-out central theme. It also made John Walker go from being an unbearable asshole to a likable asshole, something so effective that it has rewritten people's memories of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier and made them think that he was a chill guy in that show. Fuck you! I'm doing another Falcon and the Winter Soldier rant. I have seen, this is not an exaggeration, I'm being literal, I have seen at least 100 different stupid-ass Reddit threads about how John Walker did nothing wrong, and they're always so fucking dumb and usually misremember the actual show. Just to start off with a minor thing, but Walker stans cannot shut the fuck up about how mean Sam and Bucky were to Walker during that show. He's just a nice guy who wants to help. Why don't you want to be friends with him? Now, sure, he is cosplaying as your dead friend who you're still mourning, and he did, for all intents and purposes, steal that shield that you left to a museum because you didn't want people besmirching the legacy of your hero, but, he's such a nice guy. Why do you two meanies dislike the guy who's actively pissing on the grave of your dead best friend? Sam and Bucky finding Walker annoying and disrespectful is completely reasonable, IMO, and it isn't just that he's pretending to be Steve, it's that he's so bad at it. John Walker, as written in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is such a fucking asshole. In that show's third episode, he breaks into a cafe that gave the Flag Smashers shelter, followed by an army of armed police, and just acts like a hostile, angry asshole, and then when the cafe owner spits on him, he fucking loses it. He grabs him and shoves him against the wall and shouts, "You know who I am!" Yeah, that screams Captain America to me. Now, does being an angry, trigger-happy jackass help him find the Flag Smashers? Nope! He finds them by following Sam, Bucky, and Zemo, but who cares if he's completely incompetent? Threatening to hurt a random civilian makes him feel macho, and that's all that matters. And then in episode 4, Sam has to go in alone and try to talk Carly down peacefully, and actually seems to be making some progress. But John's impatient and bursts in and ruins it, which leads to Carly killing his sidekick Lamar later in the episode. I don't know if Sam could have talked no jutsu'd Carly down, but Walker couldn't wait 5 fucking minutes to see if it'd work because he's an asshole. And of course, after Lamar dies, how does John react? He chases down Nico, who notably isn't the one who killed Lamar, shoves him to the ground, and then, as he is begging for his life, Walker smashes his fucking skull in. The way this scene is framed is designed to bring to mind infamous acts of police brutality, like the lynching of George Floyd, that were still fresh in the minds of Americans when the show came out. This scene, and the scene where John goes into a rage for being disrespected, are designed to give him the vibe, not of a hero, not of Captain America, but of a violent, racist cop. The whole point of the show is that this is the hero that the US government wants, but that their idea of heroism is twisted and born from the same ideals that led to the mistreatment of African Americans generally, and Isaiah Bradley specifically. Now, based on both the narrative of the show and basic human decency, killing Nico was a bad thing to do, right? Right? No, it was based because he was a terrorist, and terrorists deserve to die. Fuck off with that war on terror bullshit. This shit is heinous. I've seen so many people try to rewrite this scene to assuage Walker's guilt, and it's dumb as hell. But he was a super soldier. Shut the fuck up and watch the scene again. Nico was not a threat to Walker. This isn't self-defense by any stretch of the imagination, especially because John is also a goddamn super soldier. He kills Nico, not because he has to, not because he's trying to protect people, but because he's mad and he wants to hurt someone. He's angry and he can't control his temper, and he wants to watch as another human being's skull is cracked open on the pavement. But according to Walker Glazers, this is the most totally hacking awesome and heroic thing that anyone could ever do. Murdering terrorists is so cool. Nico had it coming because he killed, let me check my notes, 0 people. But he worked with people who killed innocent people, unlike American soldier who committed war crimes in Afghanistan, an employee of the government agency planning ethnic cleansing, John Walker. So, let me explain the themes of this show, because apparently they were too complex for Redditors. The underlying moral stance that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier takes is that killing is wrong, which shouldn't be surprising because it's a very common theme in superhero media. It's undercut by the opening scene where Sam kills Batroc's goons and all the other scenes in the MCU where heroes kill people, but the show attempts to take a firm stance that killing people is wrong. It was wrong when Bucky killed people, it's wrong when Carly kills people, and yes, it is wrong when Captain America kills people. There are pretty clear parallels to be drawn between Carly and Walker's ways of thinking. Carly only starts killing people after her adoptive mother is murdered by the GRC. The GRC rips Carly's mother from her home, throws her in a refugee camp without sufficient food or medicine, and she dies of tuberculosis. Carly blows up those GRC guys who are just sitting on medical supplies because, quite honestly, they played a role in murdering her mother, albeit an indirect one. And that's morally wrong, according to the show. This is not a show that believes revenge is good. It, much like Civil War before it, takes a stance that it's bad to be consumed by vengeance. Carly feels fine in killing the GRC guys and later in trying to kill Walker because they work for a violent group of thugs that killed her mother. The show says that her actions are understandable, but still morally wrong. Not so horrible that she's beyond redemption, not so horrible that she stops being a person, but still wrong, because killing people is wrong. And so when Walker kills Nico because he's a member of the group that killed Lamar Hoskins, it's supposed to be an evil act, because killing people is wrong. But for a lot of people, Carly Morgenthau killing men who work for the group that killed her mother is unquestionably evil, but John Walker killing Nico because he works for the group that killed his friend is unquestionably good, because John's an American soldier and Carly's a terrorist. John's actions are morally righteous even when they're identical to Carly's because she's a terrorist and terrorists aren't human beings. To be clear, Wyatt Russell is a great actor and honestly John Walker is a great character. But he works because he's a bad person going through a redemption arc, not because he never did anything wrong. By the way, I had a conversation with this dumbfuck on Reddit who tried to insist, actually, murdering Nico was the most logical choice possible because it is impossible to take Flag Smashers prisoner, except for later in the same show where John and Bucky do that with ease. And if John had taken the time to arrest him, the Flag Smashers would have gone away, which is why he had to do the cold, unfeeling, logical, not driven by emotion at all act of brutally killing another human being in front of a crowd of horrified people, then not chasing after the Flag Smashers and instead running away to a random ass abandoned factory and then trying to murder Sam when he tells Walker to turn himself in. Hey, remember that scene where Walker attacks Sam in a violent rage and tries to smash his skull open like he did with Nico? Remember that? The Walker Glazers never mentioned that for some fucking reason. Hey,
do you think that killing Sam Wilson is a good thing to do?
But a lot of them do actually think that. Like, so many people walked away from that show, which, by the way, was so fucking shitty, having come to the conclusion that it's actually about a brave hero who just wants to kill people, and that evil, nagging, terrorist sympathizer Sam Wilson who just keeps getting in his way.
To a lot of fans, the problem with Sam Wilson is that he commits the sin of empathy. He tries to understand his enemies, tries to talk them down, instead of just beating them to death. They can't fucking stand that Sam would mourn Carly's death. Can't fucking stand that he would dare cradle the body of the girl who struck back against the government because they killed her mom. How dare he treat her like a human being?
Like, Sam gives a big speech at the end about how the government needs to stop just labeling people terrorists as a way to dehumanize them and ignore their motives, and everyone loses their fucking mind over that line because how dare he empathize with terrorists? How dare he insist we stop dehumanizing the people who aren't human beings?
It doesn't matter why Carly did what she did, doesn't matter what cause she fought for, the government called her a terrorist, and the viewers decided that meant she wasn't a human being. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a mess of a show. It isn't very good on the whole, but parts of it are. Its greatest strength is Sam Wilson. Anthony Mackie does a great job in that show. Sam has an excellent arc of dealing with his fears about taking over Steve's mantle, of him questioning what Captain America even stands for. The show reshapes Sam Wilson into an amazing hero whose greatest strength is his empathy, his ability to care for other human beings. Steve chose Sam to take up his name because Sam cares, because Sam is the type of person who would mourn Carly's death. That is why Sam makes a good Captain America, not because he's something to aspire to, whatever the hell that means, because he sees the good in other people.
Although, in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this is kind of undercut by the fact that it isn't enough. He doesn't manage to talk no jutsu Carly into surrendering, and instead, she gets shot to death by a third party. And, you know, in real life, that speech he gave to the senator wouldn't have worked. The Patch Act would have passed, resulting in millions of innocent people being rounded up and deported by armed government thugs, and what the hell would Sam do then? I think that's all I have to say about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Let's finish the shitty movie that makes that show look like a masterpiece. The Bucky scene ends with a joke about Ruth really wanting to fuck that old man. Then we get reminded that Isaiah is still in prison, even though, you know, everyone knows he's innocent. That's fun.
Back at the White House, Betty finally picks up because she's worried about the assassination attempt. Thank you, Samuel Stearns, for restoring Ross's relationship with his daughter by brainwashing a bunch of dudes into almost killing him. Ross says that he's made a lot of mistakes, but he's trying to change and be a better person. He asks if they could take a walk through the cherry blossoms like in the old days, and Betty says that'd be nice. Stearns walks up to Cap outside the hospital because this was the only way to get the story of what Ross did to him in the news, and no, it wasn't. There were other ways. He says that he and Sam want the same thing, for the world to finally see Ross for who he truly is. And I'm gonna be honest, Stearns, I think your hatred for Ross is a bit stronger than Sam's. Sam dislikes him, but, like, he doesn't have this obsessive hate boner you have, Samuel. Oh, hey, I just realized that they're both named Sam. That's neat. Stearns says Ross turned me into a monster. It's only right I do the same to him. And Cap asks if Stearns ever considered if he was wrong about Ross. Cap flies off to the White House. As he does, Stearns says, if I'm right about Ross, you're gonna die. Ross gives a press conference about the treaty, and reporters ask him hard questions, which is how you know that this movie is a piece of fiction. They ask about the stolen adamantium and all the stuff he did to Stearns. Then, over the speakers, Ross's phone call with Stearns starts playing. Secret Service agents try to drag Ross away, and the stress finally gets to him, causing him to turn into a Hulk.
So, like, I rewatched The Venture Bros while writing and editing this video, and I am no longer able to take Red Hulk seriously as a character because all I can think of when I watch this movie is General Timothy Tristar!
Red Hulk tosses a podium at the crowd, so Layla and the other Secret Service agents open fire, and what?
They shoot the president? That's like the one thing you're not supposed to do as a Secret Service agent. And yes, he was a danger to other people, but newsflash, he's the president. Being a danger to other people comes with the job description. He tried to start a war with Japan yesterday and you didn't shoot him then. Also, come on, you live in the MCU. You should know that shooting a Hulk just makes it angrier. This is common knowledge. Ross starts smashing and Captain America shows up to save the day. Ross does his best impression of... Hold on. Give me a moment. Let me Google who the guy that burned down the White House was. Ross? It was Ross? Seriously? Thaddeus Ross does his best impression of his great-great-great-grandpa Robert and destroys the White House. He also fucks up the Washington Monument, and come on, they just got done fixing that after Spider-Man fucked it up. Ross at one point wields an American flag like a weapon because subtlety is for cowards. And here I was, thinking Carly was a flag smasher, ha ha ha. Everyone laughed, I'm funny. Ruth attacks Ross with drones that don't stop him and just cause a bunch of destruction, and you know, the jokes just write themselves. This fight is cool, but it's also disappointing because this isn't a movie where Captain America fights the president. It's a movie where the president is the antagonist, and it's a movie where he fights Captain America. But in this scene, he isn't the president. He's a big red anger monster that used to be the president, but that isn't the president right now. You know, Captain America's fighting the president. That sounds political, but this isn't. It's Cap fighting Ross because he's a Hulk, not because of Ross's policies. And honestly, Cap would be justified in beating the shit out of Ross even if he wasn't a Hulk. He framed Stearns and kept him in prison for 17 years. He refused to let Isaiah go even when he knew he was innocent. He helped cover up the murders of a bunch of soldiers by not telling anyone that he knew exactly who killed them. He invaded Mexico. He almost started a war with Japan. Again and again, Ross has proven that he is not just unfit to lead, but that he is a violent, dangerous criminal. But even if the president is a criminal, Marvel can't make a movie where a superhero stops him because he's the president. He's allowed to commit crimes. This is a broader problem with Captain America movies, with the MCU, and hell, with superhero stories in general. And I know I'm repeating myself. I've said this 1,000 fucking times, but God, I'm so sick of superheroes and the status quo. When violence happens at the hands of the political establishment in these stories, it isn't treated as good, but it's treated as ordinary. It isn't treated as a thing superheroes should stop, even if the government is committing crimes, even if the government is doing the same exact shit that supervillains the Avengers will gladly fight. It's why Sam and Bucky fought Carly instead of Tuggo in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because she was a terrorist and he was a politician. Hell, you can make a good argument that in The Winter Soldier, Captain America isn't fighting an American government agency trying to carry out mass killings because Hydra isn't a government agency. I was wrong earlier. Captain America doesn't take a stand against the government. Cap gets involved when it becomes clear that S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't actually the government. It's an imposter. It's a rogue group of Nazis that are pretending to be the government. It isn't the real American government. The American government could never be fascist. The American government could never kill millions of innocent people. It's only acting fascist because an insidious group of outsiders have wormed their way into positions of power. Winter Soldier, as amazing of a film as it is, isn't about Captain America standing up to the government, and neither is Brave New World. And this is disappointing, but also, it has to be this way. Not just because, oh, Disney won't distribute anything subversive, but because, what the hell is Captain America supposed to do? Break into the White House, fight through a bunch of Secret Service agents, and knock Ross out because Ross is a criminal? Then what? Throw him in jail? Sam's not a fucking cop, and the actual cops will let Ross go in a heartbeat because it's legal for the president to be a violent criminal. It's only when he does something out of the ordinary, when he becomes a big red monster, that Sam can fight the president and be treated as a superhero instead of a supervillain. What did I expect to happen at the end of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier? What based anarchist ending did I delude myself into thinking was possible? What? Did I expect it to end with Sam threatening to kill the senator to stop him from being evil? Because that wouldn't fucking work. Did I expect him to pick up Carly's ideals, kill those evil fucking politicians to stop them from passing the Patch Act? Because that wouldn't fucking work. Sam would be thrown in jail and the politicians would be replaced with ones just as shitty. It wouldn't stop the Patch Act, so maybe that's the best solution. Maybe the best solution is just to keep your head down and accept that you can't realistically do anything to fight evil. Just accept that it's legal for the president to commit crimes, that there's nothing you can do to stop brutality towards immigrants, that fascism is taking control of America, and there is nothing we can do. God, I feel dirty just saying that. You know what? Maybe it's realistic for Captain America to be politically impotent. Maybe it's realistic for him to be a centrist lib who understands that the government has a monopoly on violence, that he is only allowed to do what he does if he works through the system with the approval of an authority figure. Maybe it's realistic that the one-time superheroes took a stand against the government, it didn't accomplish anything, and ended with them all going to jail. But fuck it. If superhero stories are escapist fiction, then let them be escapist. Let them be stories where evil can be defeated, where a better world is possible, where no one is above the law. Let them be stories where superheroes save the world instead of just accepting that things are the way they are. I don't fucking know. I've written this same exact rant a half dozen times, and it's starting to get repetitive. I'm sorry. Maybe instead of talking about what I wish this movie was, I should instead talk about what it actually is. Cap leads Ross to Haines Point where the cherry blossom trees are, which means I can finally explain the very obvious symbolism running through this movie. Washington, D.C. has a grove of cherry blossom trees donated by the Japanese government in 1912. They're one of the city's most famous features, and they're a feature that has stood the test of time, even as relations between the two nations have been tested. In 1941, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, racists vandalized the trees. From 1942 to 1947, the festival celebrating the trees was cancelled, but the trees are still standing, a symbol of camaraderie between nations that has long outlasted the horrors of the Second World War. That's what the trees represent. Like, within the narrative of the film, they symbolize Ross's relationship with his daughter, but out of universe, they're a symbol of togetherness. There is a reason the film begins with a speech about togetherness, because that's what this film is about. Not necessarily togetherness during violence, but the ability to reconcile after it, as Sam hopes to do with Ross during this film. Or, to quote director Julius Ona, they represent empathy. In an interview with Vanity Fair, he stated, "When you think back to the history of those cherry blossoms, they were donated by the Japanese ambassador and the Japanese government to the United States. There's an element of connection, of moving past differences. It roots back to the themes that I think are so essential to this movie." And for all this film's faults, it is clear that a lot of thought was put into those themes. As they fight, Sam tries to get Ross to remember the time he spent with Betty. Ross just beats him down, but Sam keeps standing, keeps trying to talk Ross down. He says he knows Ross has done terrible things, but he's trying to change. Now's the time to prove it to the world. Prove it to Betty. The petal lands on Ross's hand, and he finally calms down. John Walker fucking wishes he could have stopped Red Hulk. Despite my bitching, I love Sam Wilson as a character. I love his determination, his loyalty, and most of all, his empathy. He's a great character. Like, yeah, it would be better if he was more based, but if that's off the table, then I can at least settle for this movie being a story about the strength found in kindness. Epilogue time! The treaty passes. Isaiah is freed and is now friends with Ruth. A reporter says that repairs have begun at the White House, marking a significant step towards normalcy for the country. Sam visits Ross at the raft, saying it was nice to see Ross take full responsibility for his actions, give up his office, and accept his sentence. Yeah, that'd be nice for a president to resign and go to jail after committing crimes. Ross says he had to let the country move on. He asks why Sam's here when they've been on different sides of this every step of the way. Sam says if we can't see the good in each other, then we've already lost the fight. Put a pin in that quote, it's important to the movie's themes. Also, Ross reunites with his daughter Betty, played by beloved Homestuck character Liv Tyler. Sam visits Torres, who is okay because, no shit, of course he is. Torres says that Sam never screws up and is always on point. Cap says that if he isn't on point, he feels like he's letting down everyone, waiting for a seat at the table. Torres says that, as a kid, he wanted to be like Falcon because that guy won't ever give up. And that's a really weird thing for him to say, because, like, his actor was born in 1992, and Sam became a superhero in 2014, so, like, you know, when I was 22, as a kid, I wanted to be like you when I grew up. What the fuck are you talking about? Also, Sam says that he's decided to rebuild the Avengers, and according to the cast list for Doomsday, I guess Torres gets to be a part of that. So, that was Captain America Brave New World, the most okayest Captain America movie ever made. It is the fourth best of the 7 feature-length Captain America films, which is not really a compliment considering how bad the 3 worst ones are. A lot of people have said that this is a film about nothing, that it is a political thriller with no political message, and I disagree with that. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Donald Trump, President of the United States when this film came out, although, of course, they didn't know that he would be the president when they wrote this film. It makes sense to see a movie with a big red asshole president and assume that he's a stand-in for the big orange asshole president, but he isn't. Still, this is a movie about Trump, in a way. Harrison Ford said in an interview that Ross wasn't based on any specific president, but Trump reshaped American politics so much that his presence is still felt even when he is absent. The way I see it, Ross isn't a stand-in for Donald Trump because within this movie's metaphor, Trump is Thanos. Stay with me, I promise this will make sense. In the Vanity Fair interview, Ona said, "There's a line towards the end of the movie that is really, really important to me. If we can't see the good in each other, we've already lost the fight. I think it speaks to the moral obligation that we all have to each other in a shared society, even when we might see things differently." Ross isn't Donald Trump. He isn't MAGA, but he is a Republican, and he is a symbolic representation of Republican voters. This film is saying, look, there were horrors in the past, there were mistakes made by Ross. He fought against Captain America, he voted for Donald Trump, he dragged the country into fascism, but that doesn't mean he isn't a person. It doesn't mean he can't change. None of us are defined by our past. We can all choose to change and be better people, let go of the bad things that have happened in the past, and come together as we enter the brave new world that is tomorrow. This is a movie about empathy, about seeing the good in other people and finding common ground. It's not a film that endorses the crimes of the Trump presidency. It treats Ross's choices during past films, his treatment of Stearns, his almost causing war with Japan, as mistakes that need to be atoned for. But notably, there are things that can be atoned for if he stands down and stops being an asshole. At the end of the film, it's said that the White House is being rebuilt, this first step towards normalcy. This movie is about returning to normalcy when Republicans were reasonable. It's a movie about being able to sit down with your Republican uncle at Thanksgiving without breaking out into a big fight. It's an idealized look at what our future could be now that Donald Trump has left the White House and his authoritarian grasp on the Republican Party has ceased. So, slight problem with that. Donald Trump is president! This is why writing political films in 2022 and releasing them in 2025 is a problem. Oh, you wrote a film about moving past the Trump era and forgiving Republicans? Newsflash, pal! That era is still going on, and it's only going to get worse. The problem is, Republicans were given a chance to look at the cherry blossom trees and prove to their children that they've changed, and the sad reality is, they haven't. It's hard to tell stories about empathy in an era where empathy is a sin, where hatred is a virtue, and the truth is meaningless. It's hard to rebuild after a Hulk destroys the White House when he's still smashing it to bits. Dreams of normalcy are understandable. They're often caked in naive nostalgia that ignores how bad things were when they were quote-unquote normal, but yeah, things have gotten worse, and I want them to stop being bad. I want to live in a world where a politician will resign after a scandal so the country can move on, but that isn't the world sitting before us. We're in a brave new world now, and it isn't going away anytime soon. There is nothing wrong with stories about empathy. There is nothing wrong with seeing the good in other people. Treating others with kindness is good, but no duh. Everyone already knows that. The problem with politics in America right now isn't that the left isn't trying to get along with conservatives and find common ground. The problem is that Republicans are fucking fascists who refuse to stop being fascists. We can't move past the horrors of the Trump regime because they're still happening and they're going to keep happening until that evil old bastard finally keels over from a stroke, and probably for a good decade after. Brave New World's message rings hollow because it is centered on an optimism that is hard to hold on to in 2025. It would be nice if talk no jutsuing politicians made them stop hating immigrants, or if you could get the president to stop destroying things by reminding him of his love for his daughter, but that isn't going to happen, so what even is the point of this film? What even is the point of this video? The point is that Wonder Woman 1984 was a better movie than Captain America Brave New World.
Jokes aside, I genuinely like Wonder Woman 1984 a lot more than most people. Pedro Pascal plays an over-the-top megachurch pastor-ass Gordon Gekko version of Maxwell Lord. Gal Gadot and Chris Pine have good chemistry, and the film gives a good, if a bit simple, character arc for Diana. Like, there are a lot of clunky parts. The entire opening on Themyscira should have been cut because it's pointless, and the film has all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, but for the most part, it's an enjoyable film. But why'd they make Diana so cool with murdering that guy? Like, if you haven't seen it, the MacGuffin of that film is a magic stone that grants a wish but takes something from you. Like, Barbara gets super strength, but she loses her kindness. Lord gets god powers but loses health. Pseudo-Reagan gets a bunch of nukes but loses the presidency, etc. Diana gets her boyfriend Steve, who sacrificed himself in the last movie, brought back to life, but she loses her powers, which keeps her from saving the day, and she's forced to give up on Steve, let him die, let go of that grief that has kept her alone for so long, and accept that she'll never see him again, because that's the only way she can save the world. And it's a really sad scene where Diana is forced to make the sacrifice, except no, it isn't, because Steve doesn't come back to life. What he does is he returns by turning some random handsome man, he's literally named Handsome Man in the credits, by the way, into Steve. So Handsome Man is dead for all intents and purposes. He is erased from existence to make Steve exist. Like there was already a monkey paw twist, but here's a second extra monkey paw twist for Diana specifically and no one else. And like that kills the movie because there was no way Steve could have stayed alive. The film couldn't have ended with Diana murdering some random Hallmark star to bring her boyfriend back to life because that would be monstrous. So it isn't Diana deciding to let Steve go so she can save the world. It's Diana deciding to not murder some random man because if she murders him like she wants to, then the world will end in nuclear Armageddon. Why did they need to include that plot point? It adds nothing to the film. This is a random-ass plot point that almost ruins the entire goddamn movie, and it didn't need to exist. Just edit out like 5 total lines, and the film would have been an entire letter grade better. And yes, even as I say all of that, I do think it's better than Captain America Brave New World. Oh, cool, you stuck around after the credits. I guess I should describe the end credits scene. Stearns warns Cap that other heroes from other universes are coming. Yeah, that was a pretty lame thing to stick around through the credits for. Should I cryptically set up my next video essay? Okay, I'm doing another Homestuck character analysis video in October, but I'm not going to say what the character is. So, stay tuned for that. That'll get a lot more views than this video. That Homestuck video, it's the Avengers Doomsday, and I do have my Avengers Secret Wars coming. I do have another video that I'm announcing at the same time as it. My next big-ass multi-hour political video essay actually kind of fits with this one. In this video, I talked about a fictional conspiracy. I talked about myths of a New World Order. I talked about the evils of Donald J. Trump. Next time, I talk about another conspiracy. Next time, I talk about the death of Jeffrey Epstein. And, more importantly, I'm going to be talking about who actually killed him.